Thank you. Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for the great introduction, Julian. It was really good. And as you said, I'm not here to talk about any of the other things that I do, so I do a bit of everything. I'm here to talk about how this woman changed my life. Let's take a moment to look at the cat, though. Look at that. So basically, this woman's called Barbara. I don't personally know her, but she wrote this book. It's called 14,000 Things to Be Happy About, which is essentially just a list of things to be happy about in a book format. And discovering this book and discovering the whole things to be happy about thing with this Barbara woman helped me curb my anxiety and be a lot happier. But first we have to go back to 2010. So I was 20 at the time. I was in my second year of university, which had gone fairly well. I didn't fail. and I was just happy to be back in Gib for the summer. And so it looks like I was having a blast. This was probably taken at the Beer Fest or something, so late August, early September, and I was getting ready to go back to university. Only at this time, because I studied languages, I got the chance to go abroad for a year. So instead of going back to the UK for my third year, I was going to Italy. And that's where I ended up. That's Modena in the north of Italy. It's famous, it's a beautiful city, famous for Parmesan cheese, balsamic vinegar, fast cars, so Ferraris, fast bikes, and Pavarotti. It's a great city, beautiful architecture, really nice, and I was loving it. The first couple of weeks, I was having a really good time, just wandering around the streets and taking it all in. I'm sure a lot of you have been to Italy and you know how beautiful it is. But after a while, I noticed that even though I'd studied Italian for about 5 or 6 years in school and university, I was a bit lost. Everything was completely new culture to what I was used to, and I was a bit out of my comfort zone. And then I started going to university there. That was the whole deal. I was going to Italy to go to university, and I started taking these classes that were all in Italian, European history, really serious stuff at 8:30 in the morning. That was in the city center, so around the corner from here. And I lived outside the city, so I had to cycle in, wake up at 6 in the morning. It was really cold as well. It started to get really cold all of a sudden. It was snowing. I'm not used to snow, like no one in Gibraltar is, I don't think. And this was like proper snow, like a lot of snow. And I don't know if any of you have cycled in the snow, but it's really dangerous. I don't recommend you do it. So I had to wake up really early, cycle to get to university for 8:30 lectures that were really intense. Every once in a while there'd be all these really political, because Italians are really political. Even the young people are really political. And every once in a while one would come in and be demonstrating about things, and they'd run out. Really crazy stuff. So you can imagine I was a bit lost. I didn't really understand what was going on. So I was sort of a bit run down after a while. I had a lot of really great friends. I lived with a lot of Spanish people, a lot of French people. And I had a lot of great friends, but this change of scene really hit me hard. I wasn't really expecting it to be this difficult. University in Europe is a lot harder than university in the UK. So I spent a lot of evenings in this computer room on my own, and that's when I found this Twitter account, which is by the woman that wrote the book. But this time I didn't know she had written the book, I didn't know anything about the book, and that used to be called Things to Be Happy About. So I followed the account, started reading it, and it's just, you can't really see it really well. It's just the same as the book, just things to be happy about, little things in life that just go unnoticed and the things to be happy about. And so I started getting this positivity from Twitter. So I was a bit run down, but I was getting all this positivity. And I ended up just cycling around the city, just taking photos. And I was having a lot of fun. I was just spending my weekends doing nothing, and now I found this new lease of life. I was cycling around, taking photos, having a lot of fun, eating a lot of good food. And suddenly I started to feel a lot more positive about everything, which, was really good. I felt really good. So February came around, and I moved to Granada. That was the second part of my year abroad. And that, I kind of felt at home in Italy. Now is when I properly felt at home. I was like, this is incredible. I lived in a flat with some guys from my university and another guy, so 3 English guys. And I was just having a lot of fun. I didn't feel as anxious or as down as I was when I was living in Italy. And I think that shows in this picture that you got a little glimpse of earlier on. See my mate there. In this picture, we were in Formula One where they do shh with the champagne, we were doing that with cider off a 5th floor. So I think, you get an idea that was pretty much the picture at the beginning of the talk when I was with the beer, having a lot of fun. I was feeling a lot better. It was so good. This was all my anxiety had gone pretty much. And I was just really positive. And I was having a lot of fun, but unfortunately, that year ended, and I came back to Gibraltar for the summer, and then I had to go back to the UK. But I was quite positive to go back. I had this really negative image of my time in the UK. The first 2 years, I was a bit I wasn't very sociable, and it was a bit difficult. And now I was looking forward to going back. I was looking forward to figuring things out again, and it was one of the hardest years as well. Your final year is the hardest year in university, but I was still looking forward to going back. And so I went back to Portsmouth, which is where I lived the first 2 years of uni. And it was a huge turning point because I had figured out that Twitter account was actually a book. I didn't know it was a book until then. So the first thing I did was I went on Amazon, bought the book, and I was reading this book all the time. And it was just making me think of ways of being happy, just appreciating little things. And although final year, as I said, was a lot of work, I spent a lot of time as well, discovering art and discovering places and going to see things. And I actually spent a lot more time doing art than my actual work. I studied languages, so nothing to do with the art. But it was a lot of fun. And this book, the book really helped everything. It helped my art. I was taking photos that now, a bunch of years on, I still think are my favorite of all the photos that I've taken, and I've taken thousands of photos. But obviously, I had a really great final year of uni, but all good things come to an end. I don't actually know where the original of that is. I've just got this one that I edited. I don't know where the original picture is. I've got a print, but I don't know where the digital one. So I graduated in July 2012, and I thought, what's the next step? And I thought about doing a master's, and then I thought, I'm going to give myself some time to think. I'm going to go back to Gib, and maybe take a year out, maybe do a master's, or maybe just get a job. And I had all these ideas of I'm going to get a really creative job because I'd spent a whole year being really creative and doing a lot of cool things and meeting a lot of cool people. So I decided I'm going to come back and maybe take a couple of months of break after studying so hard before I started actually doing a job hunt. And before I knew it, it was 2013. So I finished in July, and I'd been bumming about, taking photos, And at the beginning of 2013, I found a really boring job. I gave up thinking that I was going to get a really, really good job, really motivational job. I ended up getting the worst job. I was in a really boring office with people that weren't motivated, which was not working. And that is when... that was probably rock bottom, because I was I don't want to work here. People who are working with me don't want to work here. Everyone's just having arguments the whole time. There was no work to do. I was getting paid for sitting and doing nothing. And I was trying to stay positive and staying active, and after work going and taking photos, but nothing was really working. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I had completely forgotten about this book that made me feel so good. a year before, I'd completely forgotten about the book, and I don't know, I was really run down, and that's when my friend Carolina comes in. I'm sure a bunch of you know her. And she's like probably the most positive person I know. Like, she's just really positive. And we used to meet up and go for coffee and stuff, and she'd tell me off. She'd be like, why are you so down? Why are you always like, why are you always complaining about everything? And it was just sort of because of my job and everything. And she used to keep telling me off all the time. And I really wanted to like meet new people. I wanted to do creative things, and she wanted to do creative things. And I thought, I can feed off her positivity, right? And do something creative. And that's when we started this little project. Basically an interview project with a bit of a twist, so it's not like a traditional interview project. And we would meet people, some we knew, some we didn't even know. And it was really good, because we'd meet them and it would be like a little therapy session for me. Like, I'd sit there and talk to people and listen to their ideas and see what they had to say. And it was around this time that I kept telling people about my crappy job, and I kept telling people about this book. And it's when I thought, oh, why don't I just go back to the book and start reading it again, right? So I started getting back into it, getting back into like the idea of thinking about positive things. And at the end of 2014, I found another job. Great job. My boss is somewhere here. Great job. And, it was like a complete game changer, right? Like, when you have a really good job and you're happy to go and you're happy to work, it's excellent. And that's when I had like the biggest realization of this whole things to be happy about thing, is that really I could just write my own lists. I could write a book like that. Like, anyone could write a book like that, right? Like, if this Barbara Kipfer woman did it. And I started writing my own list, because the idea was that I could have something that I could relate to later on. So whilst I'm positive, it's cool. When you're down, if you have a list that you can relate to, it makes sense, right? And I started writing lists everywhere. This is quite a recent one. I've had this for maybe like a couple of months. But I've had lists on my iPad, on my phone, in my MacBook, in notepads. I find notepads everywhere with things, the bits of paper, and I'm constantly thinking of positive things, which is incredible. Like, it sounds kind of silly, no? And if you read some of these things, I don't know if you can read them. It's just like, let me just give you a couple of examples. So I've got like uncontrollable laughter. It's really good, right? Really cool. This is one of my favorite. Being by candlelight at dusk. Not Dusk the nightclub, like Dusk the real thing. I don't want to be in dusk. And I just noticed that is what I'm doing constantly. I'm constantly thinking of things to be happy about all the time, which is great. And I recently met up with Carolina, my friend, again, and she was like, what's happened to you? Because it was like, I was telling her like, oh, look at this, look at these clouds, how nice they are. But it's like a coping mechanism. And I think, like, try it for yourselves, If you ever think that you're a bit down, like, give it a go. Like, just start with thinking about things. Or even just buy a copy of the book, they're quite cheap. Or go on the Twitter account. I'm not going to lend you my book, I don't like lending books. But I bought a couple of copies for friends, and like, they've enjoyed it, and it's a great book. So just give it a try. And I can guarantee you'll feel a lot better. And I've actually got outside here, like there's a table outside, I left a notepad there. So if you want, you can write something to be happy about in that notepad, and I'll do a little art project with it. Everyone wins, right? You start like thinking about things to be happy about, and I make an art project. So that's what I'm trying to get at. If you guys just like listen, just buy a book, like buy the cheap, and like if you if you ever feel like run down about anything, just you just have to open it. It's a list, so it's like a great coffee table book. You open it and you're like, oh look, this Barbara woman thinks that cats rolling around are cool, and I can guarantee you'll feel a lot better. Thank you. We've got 20 seconds to go.